Morning. We have two guests today. One is our speaker, Dave Pollock. I'm supposed to introduce him. I think he's the first gentleman. And we also have an honorary member, Don. Welcome back, Don.
All right. 50-50. All right, happy dogs. Is anybody happy? Looks like Blue's happy.
We saw the goal for those who engage rather than go part of the goal. And they put the form of power, the video, it was absolutely that. That was the I've been in the week of, I thought it was but I just wanted to share a story that in the back road, we have over there, ballers, okay, and that the woman is the wall. Walk around. And she's now doing it, and we don't back on the body. It's incredible. So you're like,
Where'd you see the concert at?
I wasn't driving, I don't know where we were going,
Interesting.
but it was
good.
Like they tell me, just like they tell me.
Yeah, very good. All right, anybody else have read all?
We know what you hear, your husband who will take us to the air. Thank you.
Thank you. You're gonna make me look cheap because I'm gonna give them $1. Anybody else? Lie down.
My voice this weekend. I have 3 happy guys. One, for Dave, thank you for joining us this morning. I was in quarterbacks club with Dave when I first opened my office. 2, I haven't been here in a month, but it was great to walk in and see Bob and Freedom and Don this morning. And the third one is my eldest turned 21 years this past weekend. So that'll kick you in the gut.
Very good. Share.
I have $1 to invite everybody to the annual cleanup of the Gold Star Garden, which will be Saturday, the 25th, and 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Everybody bring a shovel for a rake, and we'll be doing the cleanup of that. Thank you.
That's usually the popular one with our club. Anybody else? Okay. All right, today's Bad Joke Tuesday is an honorary speaker because this is the first time he's worked with this program. So, David, how good are you with PowerPoint? The answer is, oh, I excel at it. They're not getting any better, folks. I'm telling you now. All right, announcement. Our membership drive on your table is a copy of the current list of potential members that are new members. So take a look over it. The ones that are highlighted in yellow, if you have any information, they're businesses that may be really nice to add to our membership. So if you know contact with any of those businesses that are highlighted in yellow, if you could write some information in on it, that would be great. So again, don't forget to extend a personal invitation to anybody that you've added to that list or who isn't added to the list, but you think might be a good candidate for our club. So we'd love to have them on Tuesday, April the 28th. The member survey is finally ready, and I mean it this time. So those of you who completed the survey a couple of weeks ago, There was a glitch in the program that we created, so those answers were not captured. So I'm going to send that email out again, either tonight or tomorrow evening. And if you could just click on the link, it takes less than 4 minutes to complete. It's only 9 questions, but it will really give us some insight, especially as we're working on the budget for next year's regular year. First video, Elizabeth has the QR code for North York's first bingo, which is on Sunday, April the 26th. There's a group of us that are going to that. You're welcome to join us. Gentlemen, I know you're not going to want to go, but if your wives would like to join us, you're more than welcome. So, Safety Town is on Give Local York this year. That event is going to happen the evening of April 30th through the first Friday in May, which is May 1st. So if your children, like my children, attended Safety Town and you'd like to support them with a small donation, please keep an eye out for Safety Town. And unfortunately, I have a sad news to announce that Roger Jett passed away last Wednesday evening at Pappas House. If you might want to reach out to Victoria, she obviously misses him very, very much. We don't have funeral information. Sheriff said that the service is probably not going to be, is probably going to be later versus sooner. So please reach out to her if you so wish. I think that's it. Does anybody else have any announcements for the good of the cause? All right. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing my husband. He is a 1978 graduate of Ursinus College and a 1981 graduate of Dickinson Law School in Carlisle. He lives by the mantra, do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. He retired in 2020 after 41 years as an attorney. You can now find him in his wood shop, reading a book, or learning more about World War II. It is my pleasure to introduce my husband, Dave Hall. And he didn't know it was going to be me introduced him.
This amazing true story involves a daring World War II pilot who didn't like obeying the rules very much. It involves a unique and rare aircraft in World War II. Most people have never heard of it. And it involves a father-son duo from Reading, Pennsylvania, who has the absurd idea that they're going to go find the last one of this aircraft and not only salvage it, but restore it because they want to fly it. This is okay.
Might be where we have. I'm reading my hands.
Okay. There we go. It's January 10th, 1945. We are at the U.S. Army Airfield in what was then known as Hollandia. It's now Indonesia. 27-year-old pilot Logan Southfield is itching to fly. The problem is, due to attrition, there aren't enough airplanes. Logan's the one seated to the left-hand side of the photograph, wearing a baseball cap and looking like he's filling out a form. So Logan's bored, and he wants to fly. So he goes to the island of Biak. Biak is kind of like the Amazon warehouse for the U.S. government. We bring all our supplies over to the island of Biak, And then the various bases will go there to pick up more supplies. Southfield gets there and remembers the general's name that he had heard and starts screaming. He's yelling, "The general told me I'm supposed to be here to pick up an aircraft. Where is it?" And the poor clerk is so intimidated, he says, "Well, there's one there, take that one." It was just unloaded and uncrated. They just put the engines on and bolted everything together, and they're ready to go. It's a P-61 Black Widow, not a commonly known aircraft in World War II. It's kind of fun, though, because it has a local connection. It turns out that General Spots, who was born in Portertown, Pennsylvania, right up the road here. By the way, I was telling the gentleman here earlier, there is a terrific museum in Boyertown for General Spots, which started as a static, gee, isn't that cute, look at that, there's his helmet, whatever. But it ends as an escape room. You put on World War II aircraft uniforms and helmets, and you're put into a POW compound, and you and your fellow POWs now have to figure out how to escape from the room. It's a lot of fun. Spots, however, says we have a problem. We're getting hammered in the European and Pacific theater with night bombing raids and night fighters. We need a way to fight back. And so they challenge the Northrop company to come up with an aircraft that has radar. They can fly at night. In the front, you'll see a white cone. In that cone is the radar. But all the equipment is old technology compared to today, so it's all extraordinarily heavy. That's why they had to have a two-engine aircraft to fly it, because it was so heavy, they otherwise wouldn't be able to be effective. So in the lower front, that's where Lieutenant Southfield would be. He's the pilot. Immediately behind him and slightly higher is the gunner. He operates many guns. This thing was loaded with all kinds of 20mm cannons and 50 caliber guns. In the very back, facing backwards in that central cocoon, is another glass section. That's where the radar operates. Now, Northrop started out with the idea of the same thing, a twin boom, twin engine, and that was similar to the P-38 Lightning. But they're not really comparable because the Lightning is smaller, lighter, and faster, whereas this thing is a tank in the air. It is huge. I can't believe they called it a fighter aircraft. Back then, you notice they called them Ps, P-51, P-61. P was for pursuit. They didn't actually start calling them F for fighter until after the war. So they came in black because they're going to fly at night. And the idea was that they would take off on short runways in the Pacific, go after the Japanese aircraft at night, and shoot them down. They're a crew of 3. And they were very effective. They shot down a lot of aircraft, both in Europe and in the Pacific. Now, this particular plane is rare. There were only 450 made. And the one that Lieutenant Southfield is flying was number 232. It had 10 hours of flight time. He gets back to the base in Hollandia and goes to the officers' club that night. And helped along by a few drinks, he's now bragging about how cool his airplane is. This is fast, this is the best airplane in the war. And another pilot there was flying off of this airfield. This is Hollandia Field. Now you'll notice there's a problem. There's a big mountain right in front of the runway. So what would happen is aircraft would have to go down the runway, take off, and veer hard to the left and head out to the Pacific Ocean because that mountain, Mount Cyclops, was 7,000 feet high. And back then, with World War II technology, nobody could get over it. There's another pilot at the officers' club that night, and he flies the one that many of you may recognize, the P-51 Mustang. Now, many historians will say that's one of the holy grail four. The four devices invented that helped the U.S. win World War II. That would be the Higgins boat, the one that would come up on the shore and drop the front down, and the men would run off and land on the beaches, like in Normandy. Number two was the Sherman tank. Not the fastest, not the prettiest, but easy to repair, easy to build, and you could outlast the enemy because you could put yours back together if it got damaged. The aircraft carrier, which totally changed naval warfare. And lastly, the Mustang. That was one of the four. The reason, it was fast, it was light, and it had a lot of fuel capacity so it could accompany bombers on their mission. Well, the Mustang pilot is totally fed up with this loudmouth Southfield and his new airplane. So he says to him, I bet you can't fly over Mount Cyclops. And Southfield says, you're wrong. So the next day, the runway's lined with all the members of the air base because they got to watch this. And Southfield goes out and he takes along Ben Goldstein, who was his radio operator, and two nurses, because Southfield doesn't like obeying rules. He wants to show off. So crammed in behind the pilot in that one spot for the gunner are two nurses huddled together as he's going to try this stunt. He takes off, realizes he doesn't have enough airspeed on just takeoff, and does a loop and comes around. He's going to do what's called a touch and go. He's going to just come down the runway, let the wheels touch, and then go up over the mountain. The first time he does it, gets about 5,000 feet and kind of loses his nerve and veers off, and he's going to come around and do another touch and go. Well, on the third one of these, he thinks he's got it. He's touched and he's going up. And he's up about 6,500 feet up the 7,000-foot mountain. And he realizes, not going to make this one either, I better veer off. However, one of the nurses, jockeying for position to hold still, has kicked the control lock. The control lock is a switch that locks everything. You can't turn, you can't do anything. And you use it when you're on the ground, so you don't want the aircraft moving around, so you lock the controls. She locks the controls by accident. Southfield now realizes we're going down, because there's just no way I can get over this mountain, and I can't turn. Now, the mountain was, of course, on an uphill slant, and the plane was coming in on an uphill slant, so surprisingly, the crash wasn't that bad. There were some cuts and bruises. In fact, the only major injury happened when Southfield, feeling bad about having two nurses stuck on a mountain, is running down the mountain to get help and falls and breaks several bones. The area there is so dense and so filled with ironwood trees and dense brush that it took 2 days for the rescuers to get to him. Everybody gets down off the mountain, and the commander of the base doesn't want any bad publicity for him. He can see it's near the end of the war, and he doesn't want to look bad. So they write it off as a training accident and let the plane sit there because it's not worth salvaging. The area you can see on the left center is Helena Airfield. The mountain range is ahead, and you'll see where it's marked as the crash site. There, the aircraft sat for 40 years. The Dani tribe, who believe it or not are cannibals, lived there, and they claimed it as theirs. In fact, the chief's hut had part of the dash hanging in it, and he called that his office as the chief of the Dani tribe. It sat there for 40 years, but now I'm going to fast forward to 1972. How many of you here have seen the movie Catch-22? You remember that? It was a World War II movie or something like that. Well, in that movie, an aircraft that was featured prominently was a B-25 Mitchell bomber. And that aircraft, you may remember, was the one that Doolittle took off of the aircraft carrier, bombed Tokyo, to kind of give the US a little positive morale boost because things weren't going there. Well, one of the aircraft was from World War II, was called Briefing Time. This Mitchell bomber was then purchased by the movie company who used it in Catch-22. And when it was over, a NASA engineer from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, told you there's a lot of local connections to the story. His name is Gene Fisher. He bought it, and he wanted to fly it. So he gets from California, and he's coming to an airport near Carlisle where he's going to keep it. He's having engine trouble. He figured he better go someplace where there might be people that know what they're doing with this aircraft. So he ends up making an emergency landing at that time Harrisburg Airport. And at Harrisburg Airport was a father-son team, the Strines, Gene and Russ. Gene was the dad, but you never hear him called. He's Pappy. And Pappy and Russ look at the aircraft and say, oh, yeah, you can fix it. And they worked on it and fixed it, and Gene was so enamored with them, they became fast friends. Next thing you know, they give it to the Strines, and they're going to restore it to its original condition. And to this day, this aircraft flies regularly to air shows. It won the best award at the Oshkosh Air Show. It was so well preserved and so well restored. Now I'm going to fast forward again to 1979. The Strines have taken their B-25 Mitchell bomber to an air show in Texas. And that night after the air show, more alcohol was consumed. I think you can see a trend here. And they were talking about, gee, do you know of any other aircraft out there that we could restore? And there were some tall tales about various aircraft until Gene's ears perked up when he heard about there's a P-61 Black Widow on the side of a mountain in Indonesia. And he said, really? So they, with no backing and no experience or knowledge, started making inquiries. The first place they went to was the Air Force. I mean, it's their plane. And the Air Force said, yeah, if you can get to it, you can have it. So now they have to go to the Indonesian government. This was nothing but red tape and problems. They went back and forth and they couldn't get any straight answers. So Russ, the son, has the brilliant idea to start a museum and make them look official. They, at that point, they didn't know anything except this little design, I've got one now, that was the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum. All of a sudden, the Indonesian government perked up and said, yeah, okay, let's talk about it. It took 4 years for the Indonesian government to give him permission to go look at it. They wouldn't give him any possession, just to look at it. In fact, the funds were so low, things were so tight, they had to hitch a ride on a 747 freighter aircraft to get over to the Far East. They get there, and the Danny tribe still have it, and they still won't let them see it or touch it. But they were able to bribe the chief to get some of the parts out of his hut. So here we go. Our first pieces of our Black Widow are in our possession. So they finally got permission from the Danny tribe to go look at it. Now, I am astounded that the two Strines saw this and thought, oh, we can restore this. There it is, sitting on the side of the Mount Cyclops, covered in weeds. Believe it or not, though, because of the nature of the impact, there was still air in the tires. There was still oil in the engine. So as they began looking for parts there on the wings, they believed they could restore this. Now, the chief got involved again and said, you can't take it. I just said you could look at it. And they had an impasse. There was just stuff. The Australians decided to get the Indonesian military involved, thinking that maybe they would be involved, that it might go better. Not so. The Indonesian military wanted bribes in order to go get it. So the first thing they wanted, in addition to some cash, was they wanted the Australians to give them an airplane. This is what's known as a steerman. It's a two-seat trainer aircraft, and the Indonesian government wanted to use it for training purposes. So they said, you give us an operational steerman, and we'll let you go get it. So they did. They got a steerman, took it apart, shipped it overseas, gave it to the Indonesian military, and lo and behold, they said, okay, you can look at it. So they get up there, and they realize other people have been here. They wrote their names all over the aircraft. The Indonesian military then puts the chief in his place and says, sorry, this is not yours. You can't tell them what to do. So as a good faith gesture and as a practical matter, the Strines hired the tribe to help get the aircraft down. Now picture this. It's on the side of a mountain, completely surrounded by trees. How are we going to get it out? And the only answer would be, we'll cut down the surrounding trees and helicopter the parts out. At this point, they befriended the Indonesian military so much that they said, sure, we'll help you, we'll provide a helicopter. So the natives began building, that's what they call a helicopter landing pad, which I'm not sure I will land on that, but. And they began airlifting the pieces out. And some of it was so heavy that they had to disassemble parts and do it in chunks. And as you can see, I think I lost my button again. These are not Duracell. All right, enter for me. Can you do that? Just hit enter. Next slide is really good. Oh, there we go. So you can see they're taking this one, the engines are bringing down. And right as they're finishing up getting a lot of parts down, a native chops down one more tree and it falls on the aircraft. So at this point, the Strines are so disgusted that they're almost ready to quit. But they figure parts are already down at the bottom of the mountain, we might as well just keep going. So they hired the only trucker on the island, and they're going to use that to crate up the parts to take them down to the dock, where it will be then shipped to Jakarta and from Jakarta to Boston. This truck, when they put that crate on it, the front wheels came up off the ground. So natives sat on the cab to hold the front wheels down, and then to lift the electric wires up as they would drive under them. I mean, this is how this operation had to go. So they finally had to bring things up, getting the last of the parts down off the mountain, and the Indonesian government stepped in. You don't have clearance to ship it. So they sat at the port for a year waiting for clearance. So long, the crates rotted. And they had to rebuild the crates all over again. They finally get it on the ship. And they went to Jakarta, switched ships, and then went to Baltimore, taking about 2 months. It's now 1991. That's how long all this took. So now here they are. The Strines have since relocated to the Reading Airport, and that's the base now for their museum, which in the meantime has accumulated probably 30 or 40 additional aircraft. I think they're up to about 140 now that they have as part of the museum. And they began opening up the crates, trying to figure out where the parts, they could get more parts. Because you see, this aircraft, the P-61 Black Widow, is probably the rarest one from World War II. There are 4 left in the world. One is in Dayton, Ohio. It was salvaged in World War II and used for atmospheric research. One is at the Udvar Hazy, I think I said that right, museum in the outskirts of Chantilly, Virginia. It's part of the Air and Space Museum that you go to in downtown DC. Honestly, I would skip the crowds and go out to the other museum, the Udvar Hazy one. It's got the space shuttle, it's got aircraft that are just remarkable. The third one is in China. One P-61 had engine trouble, crash landed in China, and the Chinese government refused to give it back. So, and number 4 is this one, sitting on the side of the mountain. Now, the Smithsonian had some extra parts, and so the Shrines got a hold of them, and not only got the parts, but got some microfilms of the designs and the plans. Figured they would use that as their template to try and put this thing back together, because the Shrines don't want static displays. They want to fly this thing. And in order to do that, they're going to have to replace fuel lines and brake lines, and they're going to have to rewire it, and they're going to have the FAA stop in at regular intervals to make sure it's okay. So everything they could do, they were looking for parts. And you can see that's how they came in. It was black. It's kind of a fun thing. They took parts of the sheet metal that was no good anymore, and they made it into bag tags. I have one on my briefcase that is a piece of this aircraft. Believe it or not, they think that between the parts they've been able to dig up, the parts they salvaged from the original aircraft, they think they're going to have about 75% original authentic parts. And then the other 25%, they're going to make them scrap. So for example, the wings, when they attach to the aircraft, there's what they call a spar that holds the wing. Nobody had that. And so they had to use a big block of aluminum and find somebody that could machine it out of that block. And that alone was $45,000 just to make those 2 spars. You see the problem now, because if you're going to fly this, how are you going to pay for this? I mean, what are you going to do that can get it going? Well, here it is. This is what they do. Every year, the first weekend in June, at the Reading Airport, the Shrines put on World War II weekend. The one coming up is number 35. So it's been going for a while. And what they do, they have a celebration of all things World War II. So you'll have veterans, tanks, entertainers. You'll notice the vet on his cheek has lipstick from a kiss. And the largest selection of flying World War II aircraft in the country. This year, they're anticipating it'll be 58 flying World War II aircraft. So this event, many people who go to the event don't even know this, is really just to raise money to try and put the P-61 back together. That's all they're trying to do. And there you have an original Rosie the Riveter. She actually was a Riveter, and she comes there every year, and she is a hoot. You can get rides in World War II aircraft as well. There are several there. There is a group called the Commemorative Air Force. They have stations throughout the whole United States, and they are huge advocates of restoring, saving, and preserving the history of these aircraft. And you can go for rides, B-29 bomber, and a B-17, B-24, all kinds of aircraft you can go for a ride on. Sadly, Patrick Strine passed away in 2018, and so he won't see it to fruition. But his son Ross is still out. A plane that cost the United States government $170,000 when it was built now has only $3.3 million into it. and it's still not quite ready to fly. They're working on wings. The red thing, for example, there is what's called a jig. They had to make that because they had to have a way to prepare it. They had to run all the wires, all the lines, all the cables, had to get new propellers and put new sheet metal on, and all the different control modules. All of this had to be done from scratch. They got a coat of paint on it, and they gave it a name, the Moonbeam Dream. So there's our story of how this aircraft went from Northrop to the South Pacific to Reading, Pennsylvania. So the question I'm sure is going to come up, how long? I've been told the static answer, Tuesday. Just don't know which Tuesday. Seriously, from my perspective, probably within 2 to 3 years max. We are actually skinning the wings now. And then the last thing they'll do is send the engines out to be rebuilt. You don't want to rebuild them and have them just sit. So they're going to send them out to be rebuilt. And I'm guessing within 2 to 3 years. So our story starts from a Boyertown, Pennsylvania native, General Spots, who saw a need for a night fighter aircraft. Went to California, to the Northrop Corporation that built the aircraft. Went to the South Pacific with our daring pilot and his nurse friends. And then went back to Reading, Pennsylvania, where a team has been putting it back together. And all because Pappy Strine had a few extra beers. Thank you. Am I supposed to take questions? Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes. Yes, all the above. So, for example, they sometimes would hit up corporations. The Bendix Corporation gave them a used device that could make brake lines. They have had some individual donors. They were very disappointed that Northrop didn't seem to. I would have thought they think this is a great idea. What our aircraft flying, and they've not been a lot of help. There are quite a few private donors, but the lion's share of the money to restore this aircraft comes from World War II weekend. There's times when there's like 20-some thousand people at the airport. This really is pretty neat. Yeah. Very well.
Taking time to see why relation playing they are looking forward to everything we do.
Pretty neat, isn't it? The one year I'm there with my daughter and we're at the runway looking up, and my neck's hurting from. I said, look back up. As I go backing up, my dog bumps into and knocks over Shifty Powers from the Band of Brothers. He was there watching, and he's, well, I'm all right, come on, let's go sit down and talk. So we sat down and had lemonade, and my daughter got regaled with stories of World War II from Shifty, which, if by the way you haven't seen the miniseries Band of Brothers, please do. It's remarkably good. But that's the kind of thing that will happen at this. It's kind of sad now that the veterans are really rapidly passing away. So that when I first started going, probably 30 years ago, that was the height of it. They had tents set up, and each of the veterans would then tell his or her story. And that to me was the highlight. But they also have a World War II French village where they have skirmishes with reenactors. You can go for a ride in a tank. To me, it's an important reminder to what happened in World War II. I don't know that our current education system does it justice. I'll leave it at that. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, the aircraft got there, and I'm not sure the commander even knew it was there by the time he crash landed the next day. Because it was that quick. It had 10 hours on it. He brought it in, bragged about it, and then flew it the next day and crashed. So I'm not sure the commander knew about it, which is why I think he swept it under the rug. He didn't look like he was asleep at the switch himself. Yes. The Down tribe turned out to be fast friends to the Strongs. They ended up being building huts for them so they could stay. Several members of the team got malaria, were ill, and the tribesmen cared for them. So as it turns out, their initial difficulties with the tribe were fixed, and they ended up being friendly. It was a neat story. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. I imagine there was some language unfit for this company being spoken at that exact moment, but it was pretty unreasonable. I got into the cockpit of this aircraft. I have no idea how two nurses got back. I have no idea. It was, I don't know, pretty tight. But that would be a backseat driver. Yes. It's an aircraft owned by a group of men that don't have the money to get it back flying again. There's a fascinating story of this whole genre of keeping these aircraft flying, and it costs a small fortune. For example, there's the Berlin airlift group. If you all remember, at the end, after the war was over, the Russians basically isolated part of Berlin, and the only way they could survive was an airlift. And so these aircraft flew food and supplies into Berlin. Well, this group has salvaged 2 of the aircraft that did that, and they will be at Reading this year with their aircraft. But their aircraft was sitting at, I think it was in Myrtle Beach area, at an airport, and a hurricane hit and damaged the plane. It took them 3 years to find parts and the money to put it back together. And that's what happens. A lot of these aircraft is just money. 3.3 million to put this together and still not flying. So, okay. Well, thank you. Oh.
Well, thank you very much, David, for a very interesting and very entertaining presentation. To thank you for today, we have a book that will choose that will be donated to a children's library, either at Children's Aid Society or the YWCA. There's a bookplate sitting at your seat that you can sign. David mentioned 2 museums, one in Dayton and one in Chantilly, Virginia, New Hazy, New Hazy. Both are very, very interesting. And the one in Virginia is very easy to get. I think they charge $15 for a carload of people. So, but they have a space that you could walk in, and they also believe they have a Concord there too. So very good. So thank you all for coming today. We are adjourned. Have a great week.